Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 3, Episode 2 of HBO's Industry, entitled Smoke and Mirrors. Smoke and mirrors, it's a pretty common phrase. I'm sure you've all probably heard it, and a lot of you have probably said it at some point. It's commonly used in the world of magic to refer to like the literal smoke and mirrors that are often used to trick the audience. The idea is that the smoke and mirrors are a distraction from what the magician is actually doing and doesn't want you to see. Kind of like, look over here at this thing while the real magic happens over here. Real magic happens over here. And the show has always been one to take its title seriously. And aside from someone literally using the phrase "smoke and mirrors," I think it was Eric in this episode. We see Yasmin in particular utilize the smoke and mirrors concept to perfection in this episode, but I'll get to that in a little bit. One of the many things that I enjoyed about this episode is that it was entirely the fallout from the power outage at the end of episode 1. And that was a situation that I just took as like a humorous coincidence, and I didn't see it as important enough to drive an entire episode's narrative. But I'm sitting there like, this is a funny way to end the episode, right? Green Energy Company, power outage, lulz. I get it, right? But no. That outage had huge ramifications that really drove this episode's narrative in a way that was surprisingly engaging. And again, I say surprised. I shouldn't be surprised. This show continuously takes moments and ideas that sound boring on paper and end up being completely riveting on screen. But if you told me that this entire episode was going to take place in the hours immediately following that power outage and would revolve around everyone's response to it, I wouldn't have thought this episode would end up being as good as it was. But instead, I thought this episode did a lot of pretty interesting things within its runtime. Like, not only am I interested in the varying responses to the outage, and that's how I'm going to structure this video, by the way, is by kind of like talking about each major character's response. But this episode also had some great individual scenes, as well as some minor advancements to subplots that you could tell are going to become pretty big later. Before I get into that, I have to start with the outage itself to explain why it drives the narrative. Hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms. If you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't, I am an acquired taste, but you can join the Patreon where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today, Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel, or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there since it's the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not going to lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. With the outage happening right at the launch of the IPO, there's a massive amount of uncertainty regarding whether or not the IPO even went live in the first place and whether or not people have actually successfully been able to trade it. There are a ton of calls coming into PeerPoint from both buyers and sellers who are panicking and are unsure if their transactions are even processing, going through, whatever you call it, within this world. And just having that much uncertainty can lead to a lack of faith in PeerPoint. And we see this, it's evidenced by this brief call that Anna makes to Yasmin, again, for like the 9 millionth time, asking her if everything is cool, if they overpriced Lumi, all that good stuff. And that's important to her because her company, Future Dawn, is, as we learned in episode 1, heavily invested in ESGs and Lumi in particular. And if you're new to this channel and you're just like, oh, I'm watching this guy's video and he's talking about ESGs, I talked about the ESGs in the video for episode 1. So if you're like, oh, what the fuck is that? Go back to episode 1. I'm sorry, my video for episode 1, and I talk about the ESGs. But essentially, it's Future Dawn trying to be more green and more energy efficient, doing stuff that's good for the planet. What most people would call woke, woke stuff. But the panic is, of course, not limited to the traders. There's panic on the PeerPoint floor too, and everyone's handling it a little bit differently. Eric He's acting like he's leading an army to war at the Battle of Hastings. That's a nice little reference for any Brits who might be watching this. And he's like barking commands. He's being a dick to everybody and basically telling everyone to focus on selling the idea that everything is okay. But also, even though everything is okay, Eric does also want to focus only on the people who are buying, not the ones who are selling. Rishi, he's uncharacteristically panicked, I think, and he seems to be suffering from some serious back itching. I don't know what's going on there. I feel like there was a clue to that in episode 1 that I'm just not recalling, but that's clearly going to be a thing. I don't know where that's going, but what the fuck. But Rishi makes a good point about how foolish it was of Eric to fire Kenny at this point in time. Yasmin's just like falling on the floor like a damsel in distress. And Henry is ignoring Robert's advice, taking interviews where he does nothing but cause harm to his company's price and doing mass shrooms and locking himself in the disabled loo. I just wanted to say loo. I've never said it in my life. At least not in that context. And I think Henry is a good person to start with when we talk about everyone's response to the power outage. This is such an interesting character for Kit Harington. Like, I'm so accustomed to him playing Jon Snow, and I know it's not fair to him, but I'm sure he understands that essentially for most people, that's who he is at this point. He can do 18 other roles in the future. He's Jon Snow. But this character, this Henry Muck character, is so different from Jon Snow, and I didn't think he was at first, which is why I like it. Like, he's introduced last week as the CEO of this green energy company, and I'm like, look at Kit Harington playing the Jon Snow of the financial world. But no, man, this Henry guy is fucked up, man. He fudges his company's numbers. He completely buckles under pressure. He makes things worse by not listening to Robert, and since Wood is not listening to Robert, the wrong thing to do, but he makes things worse by not listening to Robert. And then he needs Yasmin, of all people, to save the day because, like I said, he's too hopped up on shrooms in the disabled loo. And I really like this character for Kit, man. Like, it's kind of like when Jim Carrey did The Truman Show. Like, not an extreme departure of the roles that I'm accustomed to Kit playing to that degree, but it's different enough where I'm excited to see what he does with it, and I've really come to enjoy him so far, especially in this episode. And listen, depending on what they do with this urine fetish that he supposedly has, this could go from a good character to a legendary one really fast. like if he had heard Yasmin peeing and then like bit his bottom lip or some shit, I'd have fucking lost it, man. But while we're talking about Henry Muck, I want to talk about that argument between him and Robert that resulted in an actual real fist fight. And the fight was a bit much, but the argument scene that led up to it I thought was outstanding. People always talk about Harper, Yaz, and Eric when it comes to this show, but I still continue to find Robert the most compelling character who has the most interesting path and evolution during the course of this show. For starters, that scene with Henry, it already had that kind of like beneath the surface stress that Robert is dealing with surrounding Nicole that nobody else knows about yet. Like, if Nicole doesn't die, I don't think Robert has that moment of honesty with Henry. And the weight of Nicole's death is going to impact Robert's behavior going forward, even when the show isn't making it obvious, like in that scene. Like we were left to read between the lines there. Like, Robert went kind of very un-Robert-like in that scene, and the show lets us deduce that it's because of the weight that he's carrying surrounding Nicole's death. Like, he's had to bury his feelings for Nicole this whole time, even around her, since whenever he tries to take it there with her, she always gets very dismissive. So that buried hurt and anger is likely going to continue to manifest outwardly. But that argument was a lot of real shit. Like, Robert telling Henry that he thinks Henry only cares about profit and doesn't really care about the environment because of all the financial moves that Henry is making to protect himself. And Henry's like, just because I'm covering my own ass doesn't mean I don't believe in the shit. Both things can be true. And I love the both things can be true part, because a lot of remedial people out here struggle with that idea. But due to Henry's erratic behavior, it seems like the board wants him out as the Lumi CEO, and his response is legendary, dog. They're like, yo, we want you out. He's just like, none of this is real. It just jogs away.
None of this is real.
Oh, it's just what it does.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Pop. Where's he going?
Like, man, I I thought that was hilarious. Like, it was funny before he jogged away, and it would have been less. It'd have been less funny if he walked, and it would have been less funny if he ran. The fact that he just kind of was like, none of this is real. That's hilarious, man. But since the end of Henry's story converges with Yasmin's, I'm going to stop here and move on to talking about Robert, and we'll come back to how his behavior is managed when we talk about Yasmin, his being Henry. So Robert gets a check-in call from Venetia since he didn't come home last night because he was literally fucking Nicole to death. She expresses regret over the necklace that she gave him, which reminds him that he left it at Nicole's house. And when he returns to Nicole's house, we learn that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree when Nicole's 15-year-old daughter first demeans him and talks shit to him, and then, of course, as Nicole would do, tries to get some dick. Only Robert can have multiple people close to him die and also be sexually assaulted by multiple generations of the same family. Like, what is up with this guy, man? Like, we're only 2 episodes into the season, and we know that Robert is going to, at minimum, be contending with the death of Nicole. He's got to deal with the advancements from her underage daughter, his volatile relationship with Henry, and how all of that will impact his current relationship with Venetia. So, yeah, like, and then even aside from all of that, we haven't even talked about possible returns to drugs, alcohol, and or Yasmin. So, like I said, man, most interesting character on the show to me. Lots going on with Robert. Moving on to Harper. Her response to the power outage is very, very Harper-like. She moves to strike. Petra, I'm going to call her... I'm going to say Petra. Petra feels right. Yeah, Petra sounds too much like Petri dish. Petra, she's a partner of Anna's at Future Dawn, again, played by Barry's Sarah Goldberg. She reveals to us and Harper that Eric was very aggressive and adamant about them not hiring her. She says he reached out 9 times. This is intriguing to Petra because it's like, if he hates you this much, you must have something going on that I should look into. So Harper advises her to kind of like hedge her bets with Future Dawn's green investments with Lumi. So like and what that means is like, you know, it's like covering your ass, right? We put all this money into Lumi. If Lumi goes left, what do we have you know, in the background that we can, you know, prioritize after that? Like what priorities do we have in place? What safeguards do we have in place if Lumi goes left? So Harper advised that she hedges the bet with Lumi, like, you know, to cover your ass by making more traditional, like, natural gas investments on the side, among a few other things that, of course, I don't know because I'm not in his business. This is counter to Future Dawn's focus on ESGs, but Petra's like, I'm tired of losing money due to Anna's stupid ass ideals and shit. So Harper tells her to call Pierpoint, and she tells her to call Yasmin specifically because Petra needs a dumb person that she can manipulate. Like, they didn't say dumb person I can manipulate, but she said something like somebody who's gullible and amenable or something to that effect. But it was something that amounts to like someone who I can manipulate. And she gets Petra a great price point because she knows Yasmin's going to have to get that price from a junior executive and not Rishi, and the junior executive doesn't get access to live pricing. And it works. She gets Petra a great price. Yasmin is none the wiser, but Eric does seem to kind of make note of this move, and I thought that's interesting too because this move is counter to Pierpoint's push toward ESGs as well. And Eric's gonna know. Eric knows that Harper works at Future Dawn. They told us that. He reached out 9 times to prevent it from happening. So he knows that she works there. So to have Yasmin say like, yeah, you know, Anna just called and did this casual little thing that from Yasmin's viewpoints, who is somebody, again, who's not bright, not great at the job, she doesn't see anything going on. Meanwhile, Eric's kind of like, wait a minute. The place that Harper works at just called it and made a purchase in natural gas. Like, that doesn't sound right. But he has to be suspicious that Harper's manipulating Yasmin against Pierpoint's best interest. And I'm excited to see that play out. I also really like the scene where Harper's giving Petra the advice and it's like they're buying the coffee or some shit. And she's like, they're just, Harper's just going and going and going and going. And Petra doesn't say anything. And then she just goes, I don't do sugar. And I'm like, what? And then, but that, we see right after that Anna had walked up and was standing there. She was behind Harper, so Harper didn't know that she was approaching. And I loved that edit because the edit made it look like her response to Harper didn't make any sense at all. Like Harper's doing all this financial stuff. She's like, I don't do sugar. I'm like, what does that mean? But it was just a ruse on Petra's part to so that Anna wouldn't know that they were talking about, business type stuff. And I thought that was a really cool edit and a really cool move right there. Anna does find out about this though. And she's ultra super pissed at Petra. And Petra's very passive aggressive in her response too, which I thought was interesting. But Anna sees this as like a betrayal of the highest order. She's like, Petra, you were there for the birth of my daughter, Boadicea.
You are the godmother to fucking Boadicea.
I said, what? Boadicea? I paused. I was like, I gotta write this down phonetically. Boadicea? Anyway, Anna completely eviscerates Harper as well. And I wonder if this is setting up Harper and Petra going off on their own to kind of like do their own thing, or maybe even trying to push Anna out at Future Dawn, which would also be interesting. If I had to guess, I'd guess it's probably them striking out and doing their own thing, but we'll see. And then lastly, I want to talk about Yasmin. I said last week that I was concerned that such a one-dimensional character seems to be the focus of this season, but also I express hope that if they are going to make her the focus, that kind of forces them to make her someone who is good enough to keep her job and not somebody who just fucks to keep it. And I'll be damned, but it does seem like that's the direction that they're going with Yasmin. Like, I saw growth from her in this episode. She seems to have finally learned how to do her job and keep her legs closed. Congratulations, Yasmin. And whatever's going on with her and her father continues to be compelling. Someone mentioned in the Discord that she might have killed him, and I don't see any reason to not believe that just yet. Like, yeah, that's a wild theory, but given everything that he's put her through and then the physical escalation of it that we saw in this episode, it's not out of the realm of possibility that this new version of Yasmin was born out of having to take care of her father. Take care of him, you know what I mean? I don't necessarily think that that's what happened, but I do think it's on the table as a possibility that the show hasn't dismissed yet. I can't point to it and be like, that's how I know he's still alive. I don't. So I think it's on the table, and it's an interesting direction. I think they still need to do more to convince me that she would do that, but it does seem like they started building in that direction. Maybe not intentionally, but they started building in that direction. So after Robert informs Yasmin and us that Henry has locked himself in the disabled loo, that's 3 times now I got to say it, and done mass rooms, Yaz not only successfully talks him out of the bathroom, but she seemingly solves the problem that he created by not listening to Robert and doing those interviews and tanking the stock price. Because I think we saw at some point the price went down to like $390 something, and as you all know, the goal was $480. But she takes it to meet with Otto Moston. That's the guy who low-key threatened her last week over money that her father owes to other people. And also one of the other guys that Henry was playing handball or whatever the fuck that game was. Whatever that game was. One of those other guys. At the same time, she calls the paparazzi to give her location because she knows they're after her because of her father. So she arrives at this location. I'm assuming it's the outside of the same club where they played handball at before. She arrives with Henry. And the paparazzi are there, again, after her, but they end up taking pictures of Henry shaking hands with Otto and this another investor, an investor who was rumored to be buying Lumi anyway. So these photos drive talk of a potential acquisition, which then drives Lumi's price back up. Or as the episode title would call it, a nice little show of smoke and mirrors. But it's a smart play by Yasmin that works in her favor because in response, Henry gets that picture of her on the yacht taken off the internet. And this could also help cool off Otto Moston. Like, he was upset about money that her father owes. Maybe this increase in this price that she orchestrated will benefit Otto in some way. I don't know if Otto has a bunch of Lumi stock. I don't know. But that could help with that situation as well. So really smart play by Yasmin. And then just when I think that Yasmin has reverted back to her old ways of hoeing, she makes another smart play by making Henry think that he's about to get laid and making me think that she's about to give it up, telling him that he's out of her league, which is kind of like the same play she made with Robert, right? But then using the info about his pee fetish to get herself a nice little one-of-one kind of bottle of wine that she drinks out of the bottle and then is photographed drinking on the bus. Just like the picture that Henry got taken down in the first place. Now they can put a new one up. Just her drinking a bottle on the bus looking like a bum as opposed to the fancy one on the yacht. But it's a pretty good ending to yet another dense and layered episode of Industry. You know, in a year that's felt like a real down year due to the writer's strike, Industry already seems to be making a play at my number one spot by continuing to impress me with how smart it is, how well it's written, and how smart it treats its viewers, which you guys know is always very important to me. It may not be a 100% accurate portrayal of the financial world for all the pricks who want to show off how much they know about finance. That's their complaint. It's not authentic. Who gives a shit? It doesn't need to be authentic to be smart television, and that's what this is. Before I close, though, I have a couple of quick thoughts. Both Harper and Yasmin make some unsavory moves this week, and both are kind of chided for it. Harper gets chided by Petra for her move with the junior executive and getting the lower price point. She gets a little bit chided by Petra for that because she's kind of like, in this business, you got to learn to let go of these grudges. And then Yasmin gets chided by Eric a little bit over what she was able to do with Henry. But it feels like both Petra and Eric will kind of end up embracing these sides of Harper and Yasmin, respectively, especially since this version of Yasmin will likely remind Eric of Harper. So, like, that could work out, I don't know, that could work out well or really badly in her favor. We don't really know. I also really like Adler coming down on the floor and just getting shit done. That character has always been kind of like this evil looming presence over the Pierpoint floor that we very rarely get to see. Like, we see him sometimes, and when we do, he's just doing like rich white man shit, right? It doesn't really feel like he's like a real character or something. It's just kind of like, that ominous corporate fucking billionaire guy. But mostly he's just talk about what Adler wants or wants to do most of the time. We don't really see him that much. So it was cool to see him not just being active on the floor, but doing a good fucking job of it. Like, doing better in this crisis than everyone else on the floor was, including Eric, who he also chides for firing Kenny. So Eric's already not handling this well. He's hungover at work. He had the situation with his kids being there. He just fired Kenny. He's feeling very self-conscious, and now he's been chided by both Adler and Rishi over the Kenny decision. So not looking good for Eric. But I'm really interested to see how that plays out. Like, Eric fired Kenny specifically because of his own insecurity, but also because he didn't want to look weak. Now he looks stupid. I don't know if that's worse or better than weak. I don't know, but I'd wager it's probably worse. But that's all I got for this week. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comments, and until next week, peace.